Friends, if I could ask your attention for just a moment. We have to stand out. Thank you for joining us here. Just a gentle reminder, if anybody has a cell phone, we take a minute to remain silent. Officiating today's service is Rabbi Harold.
The poet wrote, I do not want a curious crowd to come with lamentations loud when I am dead, nor draw out my words in ways rehearsed by them with hearty praise when life has fled. I only want the faithful few who stood for good and evil too, true friendship's test. Just those who sought to find good, and then, as only true friends could, forgave the rest. And have them found these very few, and speak perhaps a word or two, and then without a sob or moan, go softly out and leave alone my soul to rest. In the words of the Psalms, number 121, I will lift mine eyes unto the mountains, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord who made heaven and earth. The Lord is thy keeper, the Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall keep thee from all evil, he shall keep thy soul. The Lord shall guard thy going out and thy coming in, from this time forth and forever. At this time we turn to the source of all wisdom and goodness and mercy. The source that is infinite, recognizing that we are finite. There is that which is eternal, and that which may abide only for a while. We ask for light and truth that they may lead us, to understand something of the purpose of existence, that we not complain. We ask that our faith be strengthened. In the infinite goodness of the universe, we have rejoiced in this loved one. Her richest blessing we share with her in overflowing measure. Her love and ours, her sweet companionship with us, her tender responding hours, filled our days with beauty and gladness, and we were so grateful. Now her earthly end has come. We thank you from the depths of our hearts for these years of life and joy and love. We cherish that love though she be gone, and reverently we shall hallow her memory in love undying. In thy light we shall see light. Amen. I'd now like to call upon Anne's brother and sister, and reverse order, sister first. Debbie, would you like to come on?
Don't you just love that picture of the Hanamite? Oh my God, I remember that day very well. I'm Debbie Baseman, Anne's sister. I'm thankful that you came today to celebrate Anne's life. I want to start by saying what an absolutely amazing job Jeff, Jennifer, and Eric did with Anne these last few months. They put their lives on hold to take care of Anne. Thanks to them for being such caring people. It was a minor miracle that they were all here together when she passed. Also thanks to Marc, Rachael, and Gabby and their families for their support. My husband Bob and daughter Katie couldn't be here today, but they send all their love and hugs to everybody. Before I tell some Anne stories, I wanted to say that she fought this cancer with determination, grit, and outright spunk. Ann and I shared a room for my first 10 years of life. 2 twin beds, 2 closets, and a semi-detached row house in Northeast Philadelphia. Ann wasn't afraid of anything. Nothing rattled her. Even spiders didn't hurt. And I was afraid of everything. Every single night, Ann would look in the closets and under the beds at my request in case there were monsters. She never made fun of me, ever. She just did it. It was like a ritual. Ann was new to driving, and in those days, the cars had a real long seat in the front. They weren't bucket seats or anything like that. And I was up in front, and my darling brother was in the back. And Rich was jumping up and down on the seat. And he was going, "You're gonna hit that guy, you're gonna hit that guy, oh, you missed that guy, you're gonna hit that guy." And Ann pulled over to the curb in Philadelphia and said, "Out, get out of my car." And me being the person that I was said, "Oh, Annie, he didn't mean it. He was, he was just, that's just," and of course Rich said, "I meant it. I meant it." But we got back on the road after that. This one is just my brother and I are bad. We are a little impish. But we were going to my cousin's bar mitzvah, and my parents had left early. And Rich and I were going, and my brother's pregnant. Mike pulls up in the ugliest brown Dodge Dart we had. And we walked to the curb and opened the door, and every New York Times newspaper from the last 2 years was in the seat. And Mike quickly picked that up, and anyway, Ann gets in the front seat. And she puts her arm around Mike's neck and says, "Oh, Mike, darling." And my brother and I became unglued in the back seat. And we were looking at each other going, "Which darling?" And I must say, to this day, we still say, "Mike, darling." That's how mature we are. I'm going to miss my beautiful sister. She was one of the smartest people, never studied for tests because she said, "I listened in class." And I would say, "Who does that?" And she aced everything. She loved her children, her grandkids, loved to giggle, collected her whimsical doodads, loved art, theater, and dance, loved to travel, loved the color blue, loved her friends, and adored all of her animals. One last thing, and it's so Ann, I think you will all appreciate this. I was talking on the phone with Ann, and she couldn't think of a word. This was about 6 months ago. And she paused and said with exasperation, "What is it with getting older and word retrieval?" And I said, "Oh," I asked if I could borrow that line and had used it often. Farewell, my sister and friend.
Richard.
Hi, I'm Rich Baseman. I'm Ann's younger brother, and I feel honored to be able to speak about her to you. I don't know where his memories came from. I think everyone here that knew Ann would agree that she was a very accomplished person. She was appreciated, she was well-liked, and she was important to a lot of people. It's really amazing when you know where she came from, what she was like, and of course nobody here does except Debbie growing up, because Ann was exceedingly shy. She was always brilliant. When we lived in Philadelphia in the row house, we had a library that was a few blocks away from the library, which was smallish but not small. had two levels. The first was for children, the second was for adults. And you had to be 14 or 15 to take books out of the adult section. Well, Anne was such a voracious reader, and her entire life she was a voracious reader, that she read every book in the first floor by the time she was 11. And then she complained there was no books to take out. And so my mother had to get a special dispensation to allow Anne to be an adult at 11. You know, it wouldn't happen these days, but those days it happened. She was a great big sister. I think I had a father. He wasn't there that much because he played golf. But so Anne really took over. She taught me how to tie a tie. She was the only one in our family that had any mechanical ability, so she put all my toys together for me. And she was a great big sister when we were little. When Debbie was 10, I was 11, Anne was 14. Anne was getting ready to go to high school. She kept skipping grades here and there. And we moved to the suburbs, and frankly, Anne really struggled socially when she was in high school. She was very shy. She was very unengaged. You know, she wasn't interested in school events and didn't volunteer for anything. And she had friends, you know, but just a couple, and she dated sporadically, despite the fact she was really cute and, of course, smart. She had a nice personality, but she kind of retreated into herself. And then I want to jump forward a bit. In 1980, by then, Anne and Mike had moved to Washington, D.C. area. And Jenny was born there. A little later, they moved to Highland Park. Eric and Jeff were born there, Jeff and then Eric. And I was in the furniture business at that time. So part of my duties were to be a buyer. And the way the furniture business worked was that there was a immense, biggest in the world, furniture show, where the merchandisers, the manufacturers would come and show their wares. And Anne called me and said, you know, I have a couple that I'm very friendly with, named Doug and Carol Cullen, and Doug's a furniture manufacturer. So I'd really like it if you stopped in and talked to him, introduced yourself. And I said, oh, sure. And I did. And Doug was very warm, very friendly. And he said, boy, your sister is really something. And I said, I know where he was going. And I said, yes, she is. And he said, she is a real dynamo. Well, I never thought of Anne as a dynamo. I thought of her as a shy, you know, kind of bookwormish, which she was, type of person. But, you know, I kind of took a deeper dive when Doug said that. And what I saw was really, you know, quite amazing. I mean, Mike, early in his career, he traveled a lot, an awful lot. And Anne pretty much did everything. You know, she really raised the kids almost by herself when they were really young. There were 3 small children. Something needed to be fixed. I mean, Mike was from my class. He wasn't going to do it. Anne would do it. She ran the household. She had all the domestic skills down. You know, she was a good cook, wonderful knitter. And what I didn't know was just how much she had changed, how active she became. And when I looked, I found out that she was involved in the kids' schools and in the synagogue and book club and all kinds of things. A friend of hers mentioned offhand that she had been taking accounting courses at college and night courses, and I said, that sounds interesting. So she, of course, excelled. She took the accounting course, and the next thing you know, and of course this, and the next thing you know, she was sitting for the CPA exam. Now, the CPA exam in Illinois is kind of notorious. There are people that take it numerous times before they pass. There are people that never pass. And the passing rate for first-timers was ridiculously low, something like 19%. I'm struggling a little here because I'm so used to Anne talking in my ear that she's talking in my ear and she's saying, oh, Rich, it wasn't 19%. Well, it was very low. That was the point. Okay. So, she passed the first time. She was a terrific accountant. She did once I got married to Susan, she did our family taxes forever. They were always done flawlessly and quickly. And then she decided to run for the prestigious, important, and difficult position of president of the school board. Well, this was absolutely astonishing to us. I mean, my parents, they could have, they were supportive, but my mother said, Anne, you hate to speak in public. I mean, how are you going to do that? Now, Anne had it under control. She said, don't worry about it, Mom. And of course, she ran and won and served very well. The thing that really, with all the other things, the thing that amazed me, and now this was adult Anne, this was middle or high school Anne, was the way she made friends. I mean, she had a list of close friends that was unbelievably long. And Jenny, her daughter, who thinks that her name is Jennifer, but not to some of us, had spent numerous time helping Anne, as Debbie mentioned, when she really got sick. And I talked to her one day and she said, Richie, well, not Richie, but that's it. She said, Richie, I have never seen anybody with so many friends. The phone is ringing off the hook. And so I thanked them, and that was a dynamo. She could multitask like nobody's business, boy. She was a great multitasker before they even had the word multitask. And, she was always unbelievably capable, but she didn't always believe in herself. And once she did, and I don't know why that happened, that's not important why, there was no stopping her. There was absolutely no stopping her. I once attended a funeral where a rabbi said that of all the funerals she had presided over, when they talked about the deceased, they didn't talk about their bank accounts. They talked about their character, their accomplishments, etc. So in a sense, I'm going to break that tradition today, but I am not talking about money. I am talking about how wealthy Anne was. Again, not money. The last 3 months or so, she was very, very ill. Trying valiantly and inevitably losing her battle with cancer. And I watched the way people rallied around her, headed, as Debbie said, by her 3 kids, Jenny, Jeff, and Eric. These guys weren't around the corner. Jenny, for some reason, I haven't been able to figure out, lives in Texas. And Eric lives in Brooklyn, and Jeff lives in Virginia. And they I thought of them as the boomerang kids, because they get home, touch base, say hi to their spouses, and then Anne would need them and they'd come back. They really did put their lives on hold. They would stay for a while, they got really exhausted, they'd go home, but they'd be back right away. And it is no accident that all 3 were with her when she passed away. These 3 were really terrific. Her friends were also fantastic. Constant concern, offering to help, take her to the doctor, whatever she needed. So that was Anne. I had a girlfriend in high school that told me that one of the things that she liked most about me was the relationships that I had with my 2 sisters. How close the 3 of us were. We were always there for each other, not just growing up, but as adults, right up to the end. Having Anne and Debbie as my sisters meant and will always mean everything to me. I cannot imagine how diminished my enjoyment of life would have been without them. I was and am very fortunate to have had Anne and Debbie in my life, and Anne's memory, of course, will stay with me forever.
Joseph Epstein is a professor, was a professor at Northwestern University, and he wrote the following. We do not choose to be born. We do not choose our parents or our times or our country of birth or the circumstances of our upbringing. We do not choose to die or the time or conditions of our death. But within all this realm of choicelessness, we do choose how we shall live, courageously or in cowardice, honorably or dishonorably, with purpose or adrift. We decide what is important and what is trivial. What makes us significant is what we do or refuse to do. We decide and we choose, and so we give definition to our lives. The tradition of Judaism is to read the 23rd Psalm that is in the little pamphlet that you have. You would read it with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Out of the depths return to thee, O God, and your hands are the souls of all living and the spirits of all flesh. Your loving kindness is never withdrawn from us, but abides with us forever, and death as a life. Give us that strength and faith which will keep us from murmuring against you. Grant us, we pray, that understanding which will enable us to recognize that you are the life of all life. May we learn to be glad for that which has been, not as something taken away, but as something given to us through which we have been blessed. Teach us, we pray, to rejoice again, to share all beauty we have known, all love, all hope, and all faith, and to understand and to be grateful for your tender hand, which at the end brings release and peace and blessed sleep. And now, at this point, I would like to call upon Jennifer, who would like to say a few words.
I talk way too much, so I'm going to apologize in advance for talking too long. But I do want to start, which I don't even have written, by saying how special it is that we have Harold with us. He's ready for everything through our lives, and it's wonderful. Yeah. I don't want to do that. I haven't even started. I know Mom did lots of things in her life. My brother's the uncle, and I wasn't here on Bullock to talk about her extreme knitting talent, her accomplishments in the PTA, school board, library board, and her success as a CPA. where she left her job and became dear friends with all of her clients. But none of that was ever very important to me. I want to talk about my mom, because according to my brother, I'm very selfish and it's all about me. But I guess maybe I learned that from my mom, and at least today, I'm okay with that. My mom wasn't easy. Pretty much everyone here knows that I've not had an easy time with her through my life. Many of you here have urged me to do what I can over the years to put up with her shortcomings and appreciate her assets. It took me a long time to do that, but I did manage it eventually. My mom lived with her own set of rules. Some were totally true. You won't go hungry at a Jewish wedding or thirsty at a non-Jewish one. It always feels good to buy a new pair of shoes or a purse because it will never make your butt look big. Some were slightly more debatable, like Americans make good trucks, but not good cars. Or you should never shop at sunset. My husband still won't agree that Jews don't eat mayonnaise. And some apply only to my mom, like you don't ever eat breakfast, watch TV, or drink coffee. Don't ask. If you do, you are bound to encounter a very specific and nasty face. There is absolutely no point in arguing with any of these rules with my mother, especially the universal truth. Everything is Trump's fault. We are definitely all here today because of him. I guarantee somehow he is responsible for cancer and is actively blocking the cure that would have granted my mom a pain-free life until her 110th birthday and the restoration of her arm. But unfortunately, he was busy with other things, and that just happened. Sadly, these rules didn't always serve her well. They often got in the way of what was best for her. I mean, some things are important. You can never have too many handbags, but others not so much. If you refuse to eat breakfast with your medication, you may end up with a very upset stomach. It wasn't until the very end of her life that she finally loosened her rules just a little to allow us to care for her as we needed to. I didn't know what to say when my father died. I was in shock. I had no time to think about it. One day I was trying to help Mom figure out the best logistics for him in her house, and literally the next he was gone with no warning. For my mom, I've almost had too much warning. I've been trying to think of my life without her available on the other end of the phone. For the past 3 years, and I still just can't comprehend that she won't be recommending my next great book to read or be available to discuss tonight's episode of Sister Wives. Even this past week, she hasn't been really able to communicate. The number of things I've accumulated to talk about and ask her has been too many to count. Selfishly, the day before she died, I had a few moments alone with her. I'm not sure what the noble thing would have been to do at that time, but I used it to talk about myself and something funny that had happened over the weekend. She could only say a couple of words, and I asked if it was okay if I could tell her a funny story. I think she said, okay. I have been so eager to share it with her because she was the only one who really understood the relationship with my friends from childhood. Because she had been there and experienced all 45 years of our group. I believe that she heard my story and was laughing with me even though I couldn't see it. My mom was herself until the moment she died. Although she couldn't follow a thought through a whole sentence, she recognized all of us, even as she closed her eyes. Just hours before, I said, "We're all here, Mom. Jeff and Eric and Marc is here." And she clearly said, "He is?" Marc had walked out of the room, so I called for him at the top of my lungs. He came running into her view, and she broke into a huge grin. She clearly saw him. I can't begin to describe my mom or who she was to me in a single sitting or even a single day. It was very complex. My friends always saw her as more of a friend to me than a mother, and in many ways that was true. We spent a lot of time together from the time I was very young. We enjoyed more hours together shopping than I could count, and had countless excursions and adventures at antique shows and quilt auctions. We bought tons of crap we didn't need, that you are welcome to take home with you later today if you stop at us, as we couldn't possibly keep it all, and we love to give a lot of it away. As adults, we gave each other lots of advice on all topics, especially since my father died. We always discussed the books we read, and always talked about the crazy updates of my kids, dogs, and horses. She loved having that distraction from her own life in the most recent months. Mostly, we laughed a lot, and I think that is what I will remember the most. An early memory of this was my freshman year in college. We had a luncheon for the group of students who had received the freshman presidential scholarship. The president of the university was speaking when dessert was served, and we were seated in the back corner of the room, the last to be served. A piece of lemon cake was placed in front of everyone at the table, including my dad, except for me and my mom. We waited several minutes, but the waiter never returned. My dad didn't care much for sweets, so my mom slowly slid the cake over between me and her. We nibbled tiny bites, glancing over to my dad from time to time, but he didn't seem to notice. When we had finished about half of the cake, the waiter returned with 2 large pieces of chocolate cake. Apparently, they had run out of the lemon that the rest of the room had gotten. I had never seen my mother move so quickly as she pushed that piece of lemon cake back in front of my father and looked innocently at the waiter. As soon as the plates were set in front of us, my mother and I started to giggle. As we replayed the scene silently in our heads, the giggle grew to a laugh, and before we knew it, we could not contain ourselves. My father tried to shift as far away from us as he could, as we held our hands over our mouths, literally trying to minimize the sound of the skit. But just as soon as we would get control of ourselves, one of us would burst out hysterically again, and the other couldn't help but join in. The president actually stopped his speech at some point and commented that he wanted to be sitting with us. We talked about that night forever, recalling it even earlier this month. My mother and I never lost that laugh. Even when we fought, and even when she was getting very confused recently and angry, we had an incident with her medications. One night a couple weeks ago, she opened her pill organizer, and she had already taken her evening pills. I asked what she was doing. She tried to play it off in a sing-song voice and started talking kind of strangely. She said she was just checking to see if everything was there. Then she said, "You know, your brother-in-law, Rob, he takes pills. He takes fancy pills. He has a problem with his quack. Of course, I looked at her to see if she was joking, but she didn't seem to be. She said, "If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm not going to tell you." This escalated because I asked to see the container to be sure she didn't double dose of her medication. She quickly became belligerent and began to yell at me and that she didn't need my help. This turned into an argument, but I got her calmed down eventually and put her to bed. The next morning, I asked if she remembered the conversation. She said she did. She remembered getting mad at me and that I had no right to interfere with her medications. I asked how her quack was feeling. She looked at me quizzically and I filled her in. She immediately jumped on board and said, "Well, he really better get that taken care of." We both burst out laughing so hard that our stomachs hurt. When she was in the hospital just over a week ago, I sent her a little meme of a duck saying, "Quack, quack," and I know it brought a smile to her face. Although it was an incredibly strenuous and emotional roller coaster, to have cared for my mother all this summer, and particularly this month. I'm actually so glad my brothers and I had the opportunity to do so. I don't think it would have been my choice if you had asked me at the beginning of the summer. I think I would have preferred hiring someone to do the heavy lifting, listening to my mom complain, argue with her, and be criticized by her, to say nothing of being told approximately every other sentence, this is her life, she will make all of the decisions, and not to tell her what to do. This did not just refer to whether she would live at home, or if she would hire a caregiver, or if she would get more chemo. To my mom, this included really major decisions like moving a small table next to her chair so her phone wouldn't fall down so frequently. But I wouldn't trade those moments now for being at home with my family and horses. Because she was still the same person up until the end. Still my same friend and mom. I always had both the good and the bad. It's incredible how quickly that time flew. 18 months ago, we went on an amazing trip together to Italy. She couldn't do everything she could before, but we loved it all the same. A year later, this May, she came to Texas for my children's graduations. I took her to see Hamilton. We couldn't go shopping or go out much, but we loved the show and sang all the songs and loved discussing the costumes, sets, and actors. This summer, she couldn't go out to dinner anymore, but I picked up soup and we watched reruns of Project Runway and Sister Wives and critiqued the outfits. We discussed my kids, our lives, and made fun of our mothers-in-law. A week and a half ago, she really couldn't eat or focus on TV, but we talked still and told stories about her family, and she explained about how all of her aunts and cousins were related. We reminded each other of funny things from the past, and we laughed some more. Just a week ago yesterday, she couldn't say more than about a sentence, but she still joked about me not killing my brothers and telling me the things I should do when they weren't looking. Just the day before she died, when she could only say a word or two, she still knew who we were and exactly what was going on. She taught me how strong women can be. But this can't just be all about me. My mother loved being a grandma. She was lucky at her age to have 9 grandchildren. She was so proud of them and went to great lengths to mark every milestone in their lives. She went to their birthday parties when they were very young and didn't miss a graduation, even Reese's, which was less than 4 months ago. She got to see them in the last week, and the few that couldn't be here in person, she saw on FaceTime. It is possible that 2 of the happiest times I've seen her in my entire life were in the past 2 weeks. One night, my brothers and I were all in together and sat with her late at night, telling endless stories in her room, laughing as if we hadn't a care in the world. She commented that we had never gotten along so well. The second was when my son Jamie got in town. She saw him and held up her arms. The look on her face was so joyous. She has often told me that if she were 60 years younger, she would have a huge crush on Jamie. But the kindness and gentleness that he treated her with during his visit greatly outshined his handsome face. Even the hospice nurse commented how he would make a wonderful nurse, and my mother preferred his company to anyone else during the time he was there. I wasn't there when any of the other grandchildren had gotten there, but I'm sure it was very similar. They were simply the icing on the cake for her. My mom touched everyone around her. She became instant friends with people she had just met. She loved to tell stories, and my brothers talk about, in the hospital, the nurses who were taking her to the bathroom, and she kept saying, but wait, I have to explain about a mikvah, before they would let her, before she would let them take her to the bathroom. I'm so grateful for the love of the friends who have surrounded her. My brothers and I were stunned at the number of people who called often, and we had never even heard of before. Between the three of us, we spoke every day, at least once, with her best friends. They were so helpful and supportive, both with recommendations and logistics, and also giving us the moral support we would have otherwise gotten from Mom herself. But there was an extended network of friends as well, friends who she used to play bridge with, who wanted to take her out to lunch or dinner, members of her book group and knitting group who missed seeing her at regular get-togethers, clients and former coworkers who she kept in touch with, so many people who were reaching out to check on her. It was overwhelming, the outpouring of support. There was no way my brothers and I could keep up as we tried to care for our mom. I can only hope to have as wonderful a group of friends as she did. It was very important to my mother, not just to have her few best friends, but to have this large network of connections. She cared deeply for people in general, and they were very important to her. Thank you to everyone who touched my mom's life. We will all miss her.
Jeff? Hi, basically for coming. Thanks, Ready. I asked my mother a few weeks ago if she had any boyfriends before my dad, and she said that when she was an undergraduate at Dickinson in Pennsylvania, she had dated two young men, both of them named Barry. One was Barry Cohen, a law student who broke up with my mom to get back together with his ex-girlfriend, Alice. When he was done with law school, Barry and Alice went into the Peace Corps. 10 years later, my grandmother, Rose Baseman, called my mom and said, "Boy, did you dodge a bullet." She had been watching the Merv Griffin show, and Barry and Alice were being interviewed. A few years after getting married, they had hosted a reunion with their Peace Corps friends that evolved into a gleeful orgy. They reevaluated the relationship after the orgy. Barry decided he was still interested in Alice, but wanted to sleep with men also. And Alice being still interested in Barry, but wanted to sleep with women. They were on Merv Griffin to promote their new book, Barry and Alice, a bisexual marriage. I don't exactly agree with Rose Baseman that my mom dodged a bullet, but I wouldn't know that her life took a decidedly different path. She was born Anne Carol Baseman in 1947 and was raised by her parents, Rose and Harry Baseman. My mom explained to me recently that Rose and Harry have little in common besides lust. She described her mom as the more intellectual of the two. I remember Rose as being sweet, wearing enormous glasses, and being deeply in love with my grandfather. Harry was a prosperous furniture owner and entrepreneur. He was gruff but charismatic, and he could speak of women in a sexist, vulgar way that I suspect caused harm to my mother's image of herself. My mom was quickly identified as a bookworm. She loved to read, and her brain, she excelled in school. She hated summer camp, was quiet and shy, and graduated a year early from Shelburne High. My mom studied political science at Dickinson College, a place she also hated, but she was nothing if not firmly opinionated. In her sophomore year, she met my dad, a gawky 26-year-old Villanova law student. They went to a cocktail bar on a blind date. And my mother felt very quickly that my father was the smartest person she had ever met. My mom spent her junior year in Bologna, and my dad desperately tried to convince her to come home early. She refused. She met my dad when she was 19. married him at 20, and had my sister Jennifer at 22 when they were living outside of Washington, D.C., while my dad worked for the NLRB. Astounding to me that my mom was a mother at 22. She ran a tight ship at home. She had us in bed at 8:30. We ate dinner together every night in the dining room. It was usually pasta, roast chicken, or if my dad was out of town, tacos. It was hard for me to write a eulogy for my mom, because I could never see her very clearly as a person. Whereas my dad seemed more like an odd and interesting stranger who happened to live in our house, teach us to play backgammon, yell at us from time to time, and pick up a check. My mom was the center of my emotional universe. As such, we had an emotionally violent and tempestuous relationship. I vacillated between hating and loving her. But more than anything, I needed her. I needed her love, attention, her approval, and I relied on her support in every way. She gave the three of us so much, maybe too much, and then in some ways she couldn't give us anything, and I would hate her for that. Later, when she no longer was able to be the person I wanted or expected her to be, I hated her for that too, and I'm sorry she had to bear that. My memories of her are those of a son who loved his mother. Hiding behind her leg, she tried to introduce me to friends. Sitting on her bed in the morning as she put on her makeup and perfume. Waiting in the backseat of our station wagon for AAA to come when she crashed into a tree, trying to avoid hitting a squirrel on our way to the dentist. Taking a long train ride from Springfield, Illinois, and the four of us brainstorming names for a new cat we had just got. I remember watching Michelle Pfeiffer on the film Reese 2, and seeing my brother that Michelle Pfeiffer must be the prettiest girl in the world. And he corrected me and said, "No, Mom is." And I felt so stupid. Of course, how could I forget that? The first time I can remember realizing she was a human was when, in her role as president of the library board, she gave an introduction to a visiting author. And I noticed her walking back to her seat with a bit of nervous unsteadiness. It was the first time I ever saw her, perhaps fearing my judgment. My mom went to school to become a CPA in 1977 when I was 3 or 4, and she really loved working as an accountant. She defined herself by her intelligence, I think. It was important for her to work, and I'm proud to have a mom who carved out such a distinct professional ability. She loved developing relationships with clients, and she was great at what she did. I think she was always a little frustrated because she couldn't advance to become a partner at the firm she worked at, but she had a full life, and not fully investing herself in her career came at the expense of being an active mother and traveling wildly with my dad. My mom had a busy and active social life when I was growing up. She'd go to the library board meeting on Tuesday, play bridge on Wednesday, and have some other event on Thursday. Every Saturday night, she and my dad went out with friends and got us a sitter, and still she found time to read a book a day. It was nice growing in a house like that, to know my parents were active and engaged. They had a nice relationship, my parents, when we would go on vacation at Tinkleford and Guest Ranch. They were beloved socially, known as wizards of Trivial Pursuit. They had lots of friends. I always thought that my mom made all of the decisions, but I learned later that my dad would make some decisions unilaterally. He had been traveling for work in LA when the three of us were young, and he called my mom to tell her he was staying an extra night after being away for a week to see a World Series game. She was at her wit's end with parenting and insisted he come home or else. Still, he stayed an extra night. When my mom died, when my dad died, my mom had just turned 70. She'd been with him her entire adult life, most of it parenting the three of us, and his death allowed her to have a wonderful second act, in which she became more engaged and active than she perhaps ever been. I was grateful for that. I would often try to fly in to see her, but she was too busy to make time for me. The hardest part of the past couple of months was that my mom really wasn't ready to go. She wanted to see her 7 terrific grandkids, each of them an improvement in any of us, grow up. And I particularly want her to know my kids more. I'm lucky that I can see her and she fought for her independence until the very end of her illness, refusing to let us get any help for her until the final days of her life. When I tried to insist we get a home health care aid once a couple of weeks ago, she unjokingly banished me from the house. We all gathered around her for the past few months, and it was nice and meaningful. A friend advised me that she might need us to give her permission to die. Last Sunday, I told her it was okay, she needed to go. She smiled at me and said, "I'm having such a good time." My mom hated to have a picture taken, but she had a beautiful voice both when speaking and when singing. And I urge all of you to counter it, to remember it by. Thanks.
This is the fourth time I've been up on the stage. First was my bar mitzvah. I gave a eulogy to my friend Ben at his funeral. His parents are here. My father's eulogy, and now today. My mom was a force to be reckoned with. She was smart, stubborn, difficult, and wonderful all at the same time. Her generosity is what I'll remember the most. She took true joy in gift-giving, from small things to her world-famous knit blankets. 3 years ago, I would have said that knitting was her defining activity. From when I was a boy playing Baker ball, she was known for sitting in the stands, watching the game, reading a book, and knitting at the same time. She was prolific. I once showed her a J. Crew sweater that I liked, and she knit me an identical one. And then 3 years ago, she lost the use of her left arm. And she was no longer able to knit, and it didn't matter. She carried on working, reading, talking, going out with friends, and still giving gifts. In the past few weeks, I told her that I was so amazed how she carried on after she lost the use of her arm. She said, "What choice did I have?" And that was her attitude in a nutshell. She carried on, pushed past, and sometimes pushed through whatever obstacles were in her way. She had a sharp tongue. My son, Avi, she had a very close relationship with my son, Avi. He's in Japan right now, otherwise he would be here. He liked to say, "Grandma was tough. She was harsh sometimes." Anyone who knew her well experienced this toughness and harshness from time to time. But she was also extraordinary with people, and that was really her gift. She loved many and deeply. My oldest friend, Jason, who's here, he texted me after she died and said, "There were very few people that made him feel as special as my mom did." And that's what she did to everyone. Once you were her friend, you knew it, and you remained that way forever. She loved her clients. Even as it was clear she could no longer be working, in the past few months, she said she didn't want to give up working until she knew that they would be taken care of the way that she took care of them. She loved her friends. When she was told 3 years ago that her cancer had recurred, Jennifer and I separately tried to get her to move to our towns. Eric, not so much. She said no. She wasn't leaving her friends. Lori, Ruth, Shelley, Susan, many others, more others than I can name. She loved my friends. When I moved away, I used to come back and visit my friends, and Stone, and Leah, and Susan, and she would always insist on coming out with us and coming to their house and hanging out. She said, "I don't consider them your friends. They're more my friends than yours." She loved her family. Rich and Debbie were forever a part of her thoughts. Her grandkids meant the world to her. She traveled the country to watch Hilary skate. She was so proud of Jamie's kindness, and Reese's intelligence, and Max and Lucian's infectious personalities. And she adopted my newest kids, Sam and Emily as if they were her own. When Rowan was graduating high school, Jennifer said she went to all the kids' graduations. It was really important to her. Rowan was graduating high school 2 years ago. The day after my birthday, it was David Stone's mom's funeral. So I flew into Chicago, and she and I went to the funeral, and then we went to meet Jason and Megan for lunch, and she slipped and she fell and hit her face on the concrete, and she was bleeding profusely, and she had a big welt on her face, and she had 2 black eyes. And we were supposed to go from there to the airport. And if it had been me, I would have gone to the hospital, I would have gone home, but I would not have gotten on an airplane. And she said, I'm going to Rowan's graduation. And so she did. We literally we had lunch, we went to the airport. He kind of looked at the funny security, and she's got blood streaming down her face, and she's like, I'm going to Rowan's graduation. She was very proud of his achievement. She was very proud that he's going to the University of Virginia, and she was not going to miss that. She loved her in-laws, Jenny and Marc and Rachael and Gabby, as if they were her own kids. A lot of times more than her own kids. But she also loved her kids. We each had a complicated relationship with her. I mean, not as much as my sister, for sure, but my brother and I as well, as parents often do with their children. But to quote my wife's favorite, Lin-Manuel Miranda, the love was never in doubt. The last few weeks were healing for me. You've heard us talk a lot about them. Her final days, she let us help her in a way I never imagined that she would. And she never lost her sense of humor. Even as she could no longer remember a thought, she never stopped recognizing those around her, asking everyone else about everyone else she loved. Her last struggle, very much in line with her personality, was her desire to get out of bed, even as she no longer could. She would say, I need to get up. Jeff, I need to get up. And I said, Mom, you can't get up. And she said, Jeff, I need to get up. And fortunately, most of the time after that, she would lose the train of thought. But one time this week, I guess, she said, Jeff, I need to get up. And I was sitting in the chair across from her, and I said, Mom, you can't get up. And she said, well, F you. Of course, she actually said the full word. But most of all, of all the people that she loved her husband. 7 years ago, I ended my eulogy for my father, who died 1 month before their 50th anniversary, by saying, this was not a tragedy, it was a love story. And I feel the same way today. They traveled the world together, they bickered, they held hands, and they genuinely loved each other. My mom didn't believe in the afterlife. I'm not sure that I do either, but I have no doubt that somewhere they're together.
Before I say a few words, I want to remind everyone that there's a Shiva afterwards at the home 385 Red Oak till after this service until early evening. How grateful we are for the gift of memory. It is a tenet of Judaism that as long as we are remembered, we are still alive. The truth is that the number of our years is not the most important part of our existence. It is how we use these years that is the measure of our life, the significance of our being. One of the most inspiring passages in our tradition is the one that goes, teach us so to number our days, that we may get us the heart of wisdom. Anne lived 77 years, truly lived 77 years. She was grateful to have had that number, and and she truly lived and numbered each year. She excelled in her career as an accountant. The clients quickly became her friends because they saw an individual who really cared, and they became close friends. She was president of the school board, president of the library board, and she was recognized for her intelligence and skill in managing both civic institutions. Anne was interested in so much and could manage to do more things at one time than any other person. As said, when she attended one of her children's sports events, she would be there watching the game, knowing what was going on, but at the same time knitting and also reading a book. Her friends and relatives all benefited from her constant knitting. Beautiful pieces made with love. Anne was kind, generous, and a very hard worker. But she also loved so much. She loved bridge and books and theater and art and so much more. Her mind was always engaged. You heard from her brother and sister and their very special relationship. And Anne was blessed in her marriage to Michael, almost 50 years to the day, and they shared so much. One of the many delights of their life together was visiting so many places on the globe. China, Japan, Africa, the stands of the Union of Socialist Republics, all before these destinations became commonplace. And not only once, but many times. It was said that when she came to the hotel in Cape Town, she was greeted by the hotel keeper, "Welcome home." And they loved their homes, filled with books. Marion Avenue, Carroll Court, Red Oak, each one filled with love as well. And Anne was blessed with her 3 children, Jennifer, Jeff, and Eric. And then their chosen ones, Marc, Gabriela, and Rachael. Each had a very special relationship with their mother. Jennifer spoke of her mother as a friend, shopping, and her friends became their friends. Jeff and Eric spoke of their mother attending the various events, working with them, relishing in their school activities and their careers. And of course, a new world opened for Anne with the advent of each grandchild. Hilary, James, Reese, Avi, Rowan, Sam, Emily, Maxine, and Lucian. Loving and generous, cherishing each one. And so, we are indeed grateful for the life of Anne Rosenblum. She will be remembered for years to come. She has left a legacy of love, encompassing so many. A legacy of generosity, a true giving person. A legacy of devotion, caring for her family, caring for her friends, caring for her community. Our tradition says, Zichrana Libracha. May her memory continue for blessing. Amen. And now we rise for the Malrachim and the Kaddish. Malrachim, Chopin, Ramonim, Amsek Rachana Kona Takan Kamfech Hashkina, Ikadoshim Tahor Kazora, Rakia Masiri, Nishman Shahalacha Alahulamo. O God, full of compassion, grant perfect rest beneath the shoulder wings of thy presence, under the soul of Anne Baseman Rosenblum, who is gone unto eternity. Lord of mercy, bring her under the cover of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. be thou her possession, and may her repose be peace. Say the Kaddish. Yitkadal Kaddish Shemei Rabba, Ba'amal Debrach Mitzei, Amlik Machutei, B'chayekon V'mechon V'chayed V'chon Beit Yisrael, Ba'galav Yizman Hariv Yibru, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Barak V'alam B'ei Hamayim, Yibarach V'ishtabach Yibbahar Yibbamam Yibbasei, V'yitadar V'taleh V'talav Shmei V'shah V'elah V'kon V'chata V'shirata V'shbachata V'chemata Da'biron V'alma V'imru, Amen. Yehi Shlomo Rabba Ben Shemayim V'chaim Aleinu V'yalkol Yisrael V'imru, Amen. Oseh Shalom V'bruma Uyaseh Shalom Aleinu V'yalkol Yisrael V'imru, Amen. And the source of peace, and peace to all who mourn, and comfort all who grieve among us. Amen. And now if you remain standing, the family is going to leave first.